Hey everyone, good morning. Let's test this out, make sure it's working. Of course, testing on Twitch just leads me to an ad for World of Warcraft. That's cool, I haven't seen this one. Alright, let's check on Facebook first then. Alright, where is my Facebooks? Alright, there's the Facebook link. Check the speakers. See, make sure you guys can hear me alright. Alright, yes. Thanks for joining me. Alright, there's the Facebook link. Cool. Check turn that off. See, make sure you guys can hear me alright. Don't need to hear me double. Let's see, okay, let's test on Twitch now. Don't need to hear me double. Perfect. You can hear me on Twitch too. Alright. Thanks for joining. Guess I need to log into Twitch. That's strange. It's never asked me to log in before. You guys use LastPass? It's one of the things I use to simplify my passwording because there's so many passwords. Alright. Thanks for joining. Okay, so I'll do a quick primer and then get right into it. My name is Aiman Akhtar. I'm a 3D artist in Los Angeles, and I have been working on 3D printing for the past 4 years in a whole bunch of different projects. So I got to work on some large-scale sculpture, stuff with Alliance Studio and Blizzard. I got to work on my size sculptures, some stop-motion animation 3D printing. This is for Super Mansion, TV show by the Stupid Buddy Studios that brought you Robot Chicken. And these assets were also just modeled, directly 3D printed, and then painted. Got to do some vinyl toy prototyping for a game company, 3 Black Dot. So really, I've been doing all sorts of stuff. You can check out my work at Aiman Akhtar 3D on Instagram and just aiman3d.com. See, what else do I want to talk about? I run my own company also, 3D Smiths, in which I help clients translate their designs from 2D to 3D. So that's some of the stuff I do. And these days, I'm working freelance at Sky Castle Studios, makers of HeroForge.com. It's a customizer site where you can customize and create your own tabletop minis. And that's one of the things I'll be talking about today. I used HeroForge's character builder, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. Like, you can go and really edit the minutia bit by bit. You can change the pose. You can give them all sorts of items and accessories, like one sword, giant axe. You can even put them on a mount. Let's see. I'm on a horse. So that's HeroForge.com, and I'm basically making models for these guys. I'm rigging and posing, and so I wanted to really use the character builder and push it and see what I can get out of it. So recently I made this character for myself, which I will, let's see, let's make this camera a bit larger so you can see what's happening. So here's a mini I made for myself. Let me turn off the autofocus on this camera because that makes it really hard to see what's going on. Let's see here. Where is the settings of this camera? General settings, updates, capture. There should be an easier way to get to the settings for this thing. Logitech, webcam, settings. Nah, alright, forget it. I'm just going to show you. So, this is a little mini that I made, a character that I started last week. And so he's really blurry on your screen, I'm sure. But this is about the size of a miniature print. They're 28 millimeters. So, whether you sculpt them by hand in ZBrush or these characters were sculpted part by part in ZBrush and then assembled using a character customizer like Hero Forge, you can watch me actually make that mini in my last stream. So if you navigate over to, let me open this up. Okay, here we go. So at ZBrushLIVE.com, and then you can go down to presenters. You can see all these awesome artists, and you should definitely check out all of their streams as well. Shane Olsen should be streaming shortly after mine today at 11. Scroll down to mine, Aiman Akhtar, and you can see all the past streams that I've done. So mostly I work on my own mystery box toy line, Fungusaurs. I've done some costume stuff to show you guys. And last week's, let's see if this loads up. I was doing a little bit of retopology, so I talked about that. And then I started making a custom figure using Hero Forge. So I created this dwarf cleric character. So if you want to see how I went about creating this guy, that's all here. And I loaded him up in ZBrush, did a Dynamesh, and then started filling things in. So I filled in any holes, made sure that the inside was hollowed properly. Well, I didn't hollow it, but I just basically made sure that the mesh wasn't intersecting by inflating on the inside and then Dynameshing a few times. So if you want to see where we got to, how we got here, you can check out my past stream. And this is where we're at today. So I'm going to take this little guy, the mini, and I'm going to print him as large as I can on my Race 3D N2 Plus, about 24 inches tall. So this should be a fun little print to try to attempt. Let's close out of here. And that's what we're going to work on today. Before I get to that, I usually start this 3D printing thing with a bit of show and tell. So let's start with the show and tell. All right. Okay, so the one thing I wanted to show and tell today is a client of mine on a project that I've been working on for the past few weeks just posted the images on his social. Paul Freeling, he's coming up with his own IP. It's called Blood Lotus, and it's like a, how should I explain this? It's like a Kung Fu animated film, and he wants to do a whole series of Kung Fu animated features. And this is one of his main characters, this cyberpunk kind of futuristic, but also harking back to traditional Kung Fu styles android called Lubu. And I did the 12-inch print for him with my 3D Smiths company. And so let me show you a little bit just basically on the model and how I prepared something like this for print, because it's 12 inches tall. So here's Paul's artwork for Blood Lotus. He's a 3D artist, worked at Blur, works at Method Studios. So he has a lot of experience, and he could give me a really good model as a base to start off with. And this is the final result, the 12-inch 3D print. Now this was all printed on the Formlabs Form 2, and the Form 2's build volume is like 6 inches by 7 inches. So it's not possible to print 12 inches unless you slice and key the model. So this guy was sliced and keyed in a few places. So let me show you how that was done. Few more images. That's the back. And this was painted by my friend Elvin Rodriguez. He's an excellent painter. I use him on quite a few projects. Alright, so let's jump into ZBrush and I'll show you how I helped Paul bring his vision to life. It starts with this. This was the model that Paul sent, and I quickly dynameshed it at really janky resolution. So you can see pretty much all the details get wiped away. However, this is perfect as a starting point because this is how you figure out how you're going to slice and key and how big the model's got to be. And so it basically went into ZPlugin 3D Print Hub. You can go to update size ratios. And you can figure out basically the size you want this character to be. Now, Paul wanted this to be 12 inches, so with inch selected, I'm going to go to Y and click on 12. So in the Y-axis, which is the tallest axis for this character, now this character is 12 inches tall. So when I export to STL, I know that this character will export 12 inches tall from the bottom of the base to the top of the head, or maybe the top of the sword. It's like slightly taller maybe. No, the head. It's taller. So that's the starting point. You figure out what the scale of the character is going to be, and I keep this model in my ZBrush scene, the really janky shrunk up one, because I need to know like what is my baseline. And I usually export the final models along with this one and then split them up in another software. So that's the base start point. Then I've got all of the pieces. So here's the front and back of the loincloth. No, that's the merge one. Here's half of the base, because the base needed to be printed in 2 pieces. The other half. Now usually with the base, I hollow it out because it takes up a lot of resin. It just burns through a tray. But when you have a heavier tray, the model feels a lot more substantial to print. So sometimes it's a good thing to leave it heavy. Also, it can, just thinking about engineering when you think about 3D printing, having a heavy base can make sure your character doesn't topple over. Alright, so that's a half of the older stash. Here's the legs. You can see I tend to favor these square keys. I like these a lot. Tapered squares. And you can stretch them out to use them pretty long. So there's the tapered square holes for the leg to fit into the other leg, so the right and left leg come together, and the front and the back sash also divided right in the middle. You can turn both of these legs on so you get to see. I tend to divide my keys between multiple meshes when I can, even if it's just a little bit, because it creates a better key that way. Alright, then here's the body. And you always have to try to hide seams wherever possible. So with this guy, you can see that this seam is hidden right in the crotch area, under the waist, under the belt. So when you hide a seam like this, and the legs basically slot in under the body, that's ideal. Same thing here on the arms. It's kind of like these muscle fibers on the arms turn into the metallic part, or the sharper, hard surface part. And so it's a good place to hide the seams. Always look for these natural seams when you're dividing up your model. The sword is on the back. Basically just a stretched out tapered square key. But I did do something fun with it, which is that I added a little notch. And what this does is when I insert the sword into the print, it basically stays in there. So a little bit more advanced keying technique. And then there's the head. Tried to hide the seams on the head as well. You can see how that's kind of done on the bottom. And usually, if I can, I'll do it at an angle. So the head's not just going straight down, it's going at a slight angle. So that's going to create a better key too. It's all about like the amount of surface area you can get on there. And then here's the back of the head. You can see there's a key for this little bandana. Where I did a little notch as well. So I'll turn all these pieces on. And let's try and see if ZBrush's expose feature can work really well for us. Alright. So with all these models on, I'm going to, I've got a bit of a custom UI, you can tell. I'm going to come down here to where it says expose and click on that. And it'll lay out all the model print pieces. So you can see this 12-inch print was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 pieces printed total in order to get to the result, which I showed you right here. So when you're printing for these kind of maquettes, for pitches, for like Paul's basically wanting to pitch his animated TV series and movie. So it's nicer to go into a pitch meeting with a print rather than just go with a bunch of sketches or renders because it's something physical. I first learned this at Aaron Sims' company where I worked and I got to help print the Demogorgon. We did a bunch of prints for Rampage, the movie, which just came out recently with The Rock. So this kind of stuff is really, you know, perfect. Like 3D printing really helps to create a perfect pitch for people. So that's the show and tell part of my stream. I wanted to give you guys a clue of what I'm working on. A lot of times I don't get to show it until the client posts it. Alright, so that's that. And now we're going to switch gears back to the project that we'll be working on. Okay. Shall open up ZBrush Stream. It is this character, the Dwarf Warlock. And actually, I'll show you guys my Instagram. This is Aiman Akhtar 3D, and I share all the stuff I'm working on. So it'll be a bunch of random like fun time pics, interspersed with stuff like my Aquaman outfit that I made recently, as well as these minis that I printed for the Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I did. My first ever Dungeons and Dragons campaign last night. There's the dwarf in all his glory. He's a cleric and curing all the minis in the sun. The sun's giving them life. And then here's the campaign my friend Anthony put on. He's got like the perfect like game room and table for it. And he was an excellent dungeon master for my first time around. Alright, so having printed this guy this small, now let's go on about printing him that big, 24 inches tall. So 28 millimeters to 24 inches. Let's see if we can pull this off. The character's already been brought into ZBrush. I've already dynameshed and chopped it down to size. I didn't want to print it from base all the way to head. I want it to be a much more imposing sculpt. And I don't want to worry about the legs. I just basically want it to be starting from the bottom of the skirt, kind of like from the knees up. So I'll open them up in ZBrush. Get rid of this stuff. And I will scroll over to my streaming and open that file up. So I can see and interact with whatever you guys are typing on Twitch and Facebook. So I've got the comments tab open on my second monitor. So if you have any questions, want to talk about anything, just shout it out. Z Senara Kitsune says, I missed last week. I have to watch it. Need to learn more about retopo. Yeah, so I showed a couple of techniques to retopologize in ZBrush, which is my favorite methods are to just use the retopology tools that ZBrush already has under ZRemesher. So under the Tool tab, you can ZRemesher models, and you can use ZRemesh guides in order to really simplify that process. So I show how I go about doing that. And then I showed some retopology techniques in Maya, because that's my tool of choice for actually laying out the topology perfectly for animation and games. All right, let's check this out on Facebook. Got some friends here. Hi, Jake. How's it going? Martha Macedo. Hey, Martha. I think we met at THU this past year. All right, cool. Yeah, so hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me. And let's get on with this. All right, so let's do a basic primer for those that weren't here so you can see how I started this guy. Here's the model as exported out of Hero Forge. You can download the STL from heroforge.com. And then you can, as modelers, you can mess with it yourself and do whatever you want. So the first thing I did was to just shift select some of these pieces and move them about on their own so as to create a better seam or mesh with basically intersecting the hell out of the meshes so I know there's no gaps. So that was the step one. I also oriented it from that angle, because we pose these characters for you, to just kind of a front-on pose, and then sliced off the bottom of the legs. Didn't Dynamesh or anything yet, just sliced off the bottom of the legs, and just did a bunch of like topology movements at this stage. Next stage, I closed holes, and you can see that filled in the holes that were in the bottom, but the polygroups are all still separate. And if I hide half this mesh and turn on my display properties double, you can see that it's still a lot of intersecting meshes, a lot of holes and gaps. And if I try to print this directly, like I don't really need the internals of the mouth. If I try to print this directly, it'll likely fail just because of all the jankiness and junk going on inside. So next step after that, I polygrouped everything together. You can see that it's still all, let's see, I think I have double down here, don't I? Yeah, there. So it's still all hasn't been Dynameshed, but you need to polygroup all the pieces together. Next up, what is the difference from here to here? Alright, I think what I did here was I exported the model and ran it through Maya to do a quadrangulate, I think it's called. It's when you turn all the triangles in a mesh, whichever ones Maya can figure out, into quads. ZBrush can also do this using ZRemesher, but I wanted to do it without disrupting the geometry at all. So that's the reason I did all quads, is because I didn't want to deal with weird artifacts as I subdivide it. Because if you subdivide with a lot of triangles in your mesh, it'll kind of exponentially subdivide within those triangles and create a lot of sharp points. And when you have all quads, you can subdivide your mesh. Let me see if you can see this. So it goes from here to there. And this is just by going in ZBrush under geometry and then upping the subdivisions from 1 up to 4. So I get a lot more geometry, and because it's quads, it gives me a bit cleaner subdivisions. Alright, and then I Dynamesh. So basically, going from this model, just highly subdivided, I deleted all the lower resolution stuff, and then here's the Dynamesh model, fully closed off. And we can take a look inside as well. And now you can see, alright, there's no stuff on the inside, there's no faces that are hanging in too deep, no weird pockets or hollows, and no intersecting meshes. So there is a bit more stuff that I could perfect. Like there's some gaps here that could be filled. So let's take a look at those. That might just have been me doing a really weird selection when I wanted to see, because I thought I filled in these pretty well with this guy's beard. This is the good thing about having a dwarf. They've got these giant beards that they fancy and they take very good care of, but they also can fill in the gaps between your weapons. And of course I needed to give my dwarf cleric a monocle and a unicorn horn. Alright, so if there's any gaps in your model, now's the time to fix it and Dynamesh those issues. Like here, for example, there's a gap, you can see right there, between the, I don't know how to describe this. It's like a crystal staff, kind of something for spell casting that he's got on his back. But I don't want any holes or gaps in my mesh in this particular case because I'm printing something 24 inches tall. So I want to be extra conservative. I want to be super careful to make sure that everything is well supported. Everything is, you know, kind of building like a pyramid. Now, you don't need to do this with 3D printing. In 3D printing, the whole point is that you can print stuff that couldn't exist in any other way in reality. Like, I couldn't mold and cast a lot of the characters that I 3D print just because of the extreme pose and extreme dimensions of them. But when I'm printing something really large like this, I want to print it kind of like a pyramid with a really wide base going up to a small point, and everything is kind of, you know, really well meshed with each other so that there's no chances for a failure. I'll have to add some supports for this sword down here, or this little dagger he's got, and I'll have to add supports for the book here on the left side, or his right. But aside from that, I shouldn't need any supports because this character should kind of build from itself. Like these arms, that's why I took these gauntlets directly into the body, so it could start printing here, and it would kind of give itself a bit of a support as it builds upward. Same here. Supports, by the way, they work really well for printing minis and printing in resin. So I can actually do a compare and contrast after this and show you how I printed on the Form 2. So you can see both sides of the equation. Printing in FDM, in plastic and PLA, and printing in resin in the Formlabs Form 2. All right. Calvin Copley Art says, yo man, yo dude, what's up? Daily spell, crystal wand, yeah, there you go. I'll call it a crystal wand. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, like I said, is fill in that gap right there. Now, I could do this in a few different ways. I could just use my inflate brush and then just inflate. And that fills in the gap nicely. I want to make sure I'm not inflating anything I don't need to inflate. So try to find a better angle. Then I can use my move brush, so I'll just switch to move. I've got hotkeys set up, by the way, which is why it might be slightly different for you. I'm just pressing V, which is my hotkey for move. And just move this guy's back a little bit more into place. So the first thing I'm going to do right now is to just refine the model a little bit and Dynamesh often. So you can see now that I've done a bit of intersection, and if we take a look what's going on the inside of the model, now there's some intersecting edges. It's kind of become janky on the inside. So now I want a Dynamesh in order for ZBrush to reproject this information from the outside, and hopefully it'll fix this jankiness. So let's try that. I'll go to Geometry, Dynamesh, and 1500 was the resolution I had, and it was about 2.4 million polys. Alright, Dynamesh complete. Let's check it out again. I will hide the half. And now you can see that it's done a really good job of getting rid of any jankiness that was going on the inside. Do a better job hiding that so we can see. Yep. So that's pretty perfect. And so we filled in spaces. So that's step one, is to just fill in spaces, simplify as much as you can. Like here, there's a gap between the beard and the sword. It's subtle. It's really small, but this is what engineering for print is all about, is finding these little gaps and then just closing them, because we don't need them. Avoid any complexity when you can. So I just like to hit my model with inflate in all of these little gaps and crevices. Like here, for example, there's a big gap here between the sword and the bottom of this coat that he's got. Now this side seems to be pretty well filled in. Yeah, it's filled in all the way. I can see the seam. But here now I've got this big pocket. And that's a good word for it, a pocket. Let's see if we can isolate that and see what is going on just in there. I'll select half of this, hide this. And now you can get a better, closer look. So there's this pocket going on in here, which goes all the way up. Look at this. All of this stuff happening on the inside. And the only way for me to really see and know that it was there was by going in and checking. Because I didn't know until I get in there that this is happening. So you're watching me live fix these things that I don't know exist. So I'm just coming in with inflate, and I'm just inflating negatively, filling in some of the spots. This area, it's too much to inflate. Like if I just inflate here, it looks really janky. So one thing I could do is come in with my insert primitives, the IMM primitives, with my insert sphere, and just draw a sphere out in here. And with my move tool, I'll just move that into place. So when you use the IMM brushes to insert meshes, you can see that it's still on my same subtool. It's part of my original subtool. It's part of my mesh. So I don't need to worry about it being a separate subtool. I can just come in here and fill in this gap how I want. Yeah, that looks pretty clean. And then I can come in and then just Dynamesh and it'll fill it in. Now I want to make sure I don't really see it from the outside, so I'm just going to push it in a bit. So it's kind of a hidden fix there. So I don't see it from the front, I don't see it from an angle until you get pretty far, and that's acceptable to me. And this should fill in this gap. So now I'll Dynamesh again. And now that insert sphere has meshed with my sword and my skirt, I guess? I don't know what else to call this. And let's take a look again. That was a weird cut. There's some stuff happening in there still. Let's check from the top down. So that sphere fixed this issue right here. You can see it cleaned it up. But there's still some weird stuff happening on the inside with these guys. So I'm just going to come in with inflate and close some of these. And when I close just the ends of them, you notice I'm not even bothering with the whole middle section. Just the ends, it should automatically... Oh, don't want to fix the part that I still haven't hidden. If I just fix the ends of these, it should get rid of these entirely. When Dynamesh reprojects, it'll just wipe these guys out, these islands that are floating inside. So let's Dynamesh again and check. Alright, see? And now those are all gone and cleaned up. So this is the kind of fixing you need to do for 3D printing when you mesh multiple meshes together. There's a question by Rufus W here. Would these fixes be necessary if you were printing the model as originally intended, i.e. 28 millimeters tall? So depends what you mean, Rufus. When you download a model from HeroForge.com, it will give you a model that's already been processed and meshed together so that it's ready to print. We run this algorithm which flattens all the meshes from the outside, kind of like Dynamesh does, and then just gives you an STL that's ready to print. So, yeah, in theory, if you download a model from HeroForge, you shouldn't need to do this stuff. I'm just showing you in case you do get any model from anywhere. Like if you download a model from Thingiverse or Pinshape, or if you get it from a friend and someone wants you to print stuff, this is how you have to fix models for 3D printing. You have to basically do a kind of check on the inside to make sure that there's no weird gaps and weird stuff happening. Like here, on the inside of the beard, at the bottom, I can see some weird stuff happening. So I can come in and inflate and make sure that I don't have weird stuff happening. So just inflating any weird stuff. That's the technical term, weird stuff. No, the technical term is intersecting meshes. And Dynamesh again. Alright, so that's step 5 of the process if you want to simplify. Bring the model in, move the polygroups individually while you still got them, and then Dynamesh, and then start fixing, and then Dynamesh again. Glauco Sousa on Facebook says, live Boolean, make Boolean mesh, keeps the same geometry while making a perfect skin, and you can after you decimate it if you need it. Yeah, live Boolean is really useful in ZBrush, and I use live Boolean all the time when I'm mixing two meshes together, but I think live Boolean still uses Dynamesh, the same Dynamesh process. It runs Dynamesh after it does the Boolean, if I'm not mistaken. So whether you use live Boolean or Dynamesh, you still have to come in and clean some of these parts properly for before you can go to print. All right, is it different to prepare my model for resin or filament 3D printers? Not necessarily. I'd say that I run this process for all of my models that I print because I'm just a perfectionist. I want the print to go well. There are differences between preparing a model for resin and for FDM, and we'll get into that when I take this model to print in FDM, and I'll show you how to print it in resin as well, just so you can get both sides of the equation. All right, so now that this model is Dynameshed, it looks good. I'm at 2.4 million polys. Seeing that I'm printing this guy at like 24 inches tall, I could probably add a bit more detail or refine and clean up some of the detail. So that's what I'll do. I'll take maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes to just polish up this model and make it really, really good looking before I start printing. So I'll turn on some music now and just for 10 minutes or so, just sculpt away with this channel, with ZBrushing and live. I don't want to really play any music because, you know, YouTube, it's on YouTube, it's on Twitch, it's on Facebook, and a lot of these companies now will take your video down if you have, you know, copyrighted music playing. So even though I like jazz, I can't play the Cowboy Bebop jazz soundtrack, for example. I have to play something royalty-free. So let's see if we can find some good royalty-free jazz. And here we go. Here's a playlist. So this should be pretty good. Turn on my speakers. Turn up the volume. And if you guys have any questions, just add them into Twitch or Facebook comments and I will reply there. All right, how am I sculpting? I'm basically going to use the Damn Standard brush, Cintiq, and I'm going to come in here and then refine some of these edges. I can carve where I need to. I can also hold Alt while I Damn Standard to sharpen some of these creases. It's kind of the same thing as using pinch a little bit. The Damn Standard does a little bit of pinching. The Damn Standard brush was made by Damien Canderel, a French ZBrush artist, I believe, and I met him at THU Expo earlier this year. I think he just released a new Damn Standard brush recently. So just polishing some of these sculpt details, adding in some sharper creases. Want to make sure it still looks good when it's printed at that scale. At 28 millimeters, this would look awesome. But at 24 inches, could use a little love. Couldn't we all use a little love? Don't forget about the back of your model. I tend to move around a lot at this stage because I want to get everything looking pretty evenly detailed and clean. Use my clay brush as well. Kind of just fill in some of these areas that are a bit janky. And smooth them out. Clay H polish is really good for, that's HP, is really good for getting rid of any weird janky stuff. And I really like sculpting in this RS Sculpey material. More people joining the chat. Hey guys, how's it going? You like my hard surface technique modeling? Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for hard surface modeling, it's all about dam standard and the H polish brush. Let's see if we take this all the way up. Sometimes the pinch brush works the best. Sometimes dam standard. And you can tell I've got a little bit of lazy mouse on here with the lazy radius, just to make the lines a bit cleaner, easier to draw. I want to make this crystal extra sharp. Alright, that's looking good. Back's looking good. Yeah, that should be pretty clean. And come in and clean it up a bit more. We got 10 minutes or so. So this technique is called creating undercuts and just sharp edges. Helps to break up the monotony. Adding some sharp creases to that beard too. Help it really pop. The trick with hair, as I learned from Michael DeFeo, is you got to basically sculpt not straight down but across and kind of do a few spirals, and that's how you can get hair really feeling like hair. Think more like DNA spirals than just straight strands. Love the H polish brush sometimes. So clean. I wish I could assign just D for my short hotkey for damn standard, but ZBrush also uses D already for the hotkey, I believe, for subdividing. And I use that sometimes too, so haven't quite made up my mind if I want to switch that out in the hotkeys. Okay. I'm going to hit it with H polish again. Those areas nice and sharp. And this is what ZBrush is really great for, in my opinion, is just sculpting, you know, detailing, having fun. Couldn't really do this in Maya or, you know, Mudbox to the extent that I tried it. Just forget about everything but the sculpt. I think you probably can do it a bit in VR. Tried a bunch of VR sculpting recently in Oculus Medium. That's really fun too. You forget about everything but the sculpt. I wonder if ZBrush is going to come up with a ZBrush VR. What do you guys think? Should ZBrush do it? ZBrush VR? I know I'd use it. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Gonna wrap this up. Put a bow on it. Alright. So this is what happens when you try to inflate to fix your problems, because I wanted to fill in this gap a little bit rather than using an insert sphere or something like that. Just get weird stuff, then you gotta fix it. You gotta move it bit by bit. Dynamesh this together. Okay. You gotta fix it from all angles. Sometimes rushing is perfect, other times rushing leads you to dumb mistakes. Yeah, close enough. Do. Each polish to the rescue. Okay. Now if I wanted to get rid of literally 100% of the lumpiness, it would take all stream, and I don't want to do that. This is plenty. Just wanted to add a lot of undercuts and sharp creases mostly in order to pop these details. Now 24 inches tall, this is going to be really big, so I could add a lot of texture and surface detail stuff. So let's just try that actually. I'm not going to do it on most of it, but say if I wanted to add some wood texture to this. Let's see how it'll read once it's printed. So at least we can have a case study. I always try to experiment with every single print that I do. Alright, so I'm switching to standard brush with the freehand stroke in this brush alpha to try to create like a bit of a wood grain effect. Let's see if we can get that. And we'll see if this actually reads when we print it out. Switch gears from the freehand to let's just do some drag rectangle. And some custom ones. And ideally, if we were doing a texture, we'd add texture onto every bit. But this is just more of an experiment for me to see how that detail is going to read at that scale in FDM. Technically speaking, the shoulder stuff is like fur. So I guess we could make it feel a bit more furry. I kind of like leaving it a bit miscellaneous here. Yeah, definitely looks like fur at miniature scale. Okay. Alright, that's plenty cleaned up. This material I'm being asked a question is Ralph Stump's Sculpey material. It's called RS Sculpey. You can just Google RS Sculpey and it should come up. Alright, I'm going to save this out in today's stream, which is stream number 13, I believe. Okay. Few people asking about the matte cap. Let me see if I can look it up. Alright, I'm going to take a look in the Pixelogic's matte cap library. There it is right there. At the bottom of the pixelogic.com ZBrush Download Center library, RS Sculpey by Ralph Stump. He's got a whole collection of really scary tunes that he calls them that he's built that show off this material really well. Alright, Diogo Colares is asking about the music. Alright, so the music that I'm listening to right now is royalty-free chill-out music and royalty-free jazz. So I just typed in royalty-free jazz on YouTube and it brought up this playlist. And it's been pretty dope. Alright, checking out the comments on Facebook. People are talking about live Boolean. Live Boolean will only change geometry where the meshes intersect and then keeps the rest of the geometry unchanged, and it's sharp fusion. And then also hollowing for resin. Yeah, I mean, I've shown you guys how to hollow before, and I can show you again. It's pretty straightforward. Let's do it right now. Imagine if I wanted to hollow this print out for resin, and I wouldn't hollow out a mini. That's dumb. You want to use all of the material. It's too small and small and thin. If I were printing 6 inches tall in resin, then I want to save resin. So if I want to hollow it out, and I want to hollow down here, I can come to my insert primitives, and I'll use the insert cylinder, and I'll draw it out, and I'll hold Alt as I draw it out. Now, you may or may not see that cylinder when you press Alt, but you want to make sure that it is intersecting halfway up. So I'm going to adjust the depth, and that's for you guys under Brush, Depth, and you can make sure that the cylinder is going through your mesh. There you go. Now when I hold Alt, you can see that it's cutting through my mesh, and I can still see it. I'll drop my mask selection, and I go under Geometry. Let's see, Dynamesh, and create shell. So I know most of you be conservative. Let's just say 10. This might take a while to do, so I'm just going to lower the resolution for demo purposes to 500, and then just press create shell. Alright, done. And so ZBrush, now obviously my resolution was lowered for demo purposes, but what ZBrush did was it took that insert primitive that I held Alt while putting in. If I just drew an insert mesh cylinder, it would have just been added on like a Boolean addition. But because I was holding Alt and it flipped the normals, ZBrush used that cylinder to shell my mesh. And if I show you what that looks like on the inside, with a pretty conservative thickness set to 10, it basically does this. So my mesh is actually that thick if you come along the edges. The inside is quite a mess. There's a lot of detail on the inside. One of the things I do when I tend to hollow is I will come in with my mask pen and just do a mask, making sure I only select the outside just mask that area, and I can do a group masked. What this will do is it'll create a poly group just for that mask section, and then I can check the poly group on the inside, and I can clean this out. So I can just click smooth and just smooth the heck out of it, because you don't want detail on the inside of your mesh hollow. That's just gonna make it worse. And then I can delete any of the weird stuff that happens, because sometimes weird stuff happens. This is the nature of trying to do automated processes. So I'd want to delete some of this stuff. I can come to my select lasso and just hide the areas that I want to keep. And any areas that I want to delete, I'll just leave them visible. Sometimes this is better if you do it the other way around, but in this case I'll just do it this way. That's looking pretty good. Maybe this too. Alright, so all of these janky areas I want deleted. So I'm going to invert my mesh, so invert my selection by Control-Shift clicking, and now all those areas that were visible first are now hidden. And I'm going to go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and click Delete Hidden. Now when I Dynamesh, if we look on the inside, it should be a lot cleaner. We've gotten rid of any of that janky stuff going on. We've hidden most everything that we wanted deleted, and it's cleaned it up for us. And now this is ready to print if I were printing with a hollow. Ideally, you'd have two holes, ventilation holes, one somewhere at the top and one at the bottom in order to create a circulation so that it would actually remove all the excess resin. But you can just do with one hole also, and then just make sure you pour all that excess resin out when you're done. That's how I'd go about hollowing something for SLA printing. You don't really need to hollow this way for FDM printing, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to undo back to where before I started doing this demo part. Here we go. Right there. Okay. All right. And this is ready to start sending the print now, and it's 9 o'clock, so I better do that. I'll save this model again. Our ZDos01 is asking, new to ZBrush, what size of tablet do you recommend? And do you have any tips for a beginner? Beginner tips is just take your time, you know. It takes a while learning ZBrush if you're coming from another 3D application, like Maya or something. So take your time and just get used to sculpting. Tablet-wise, I mean, I started with the mouse in ZBrush. Eventually, I switched to a Wacom tablet. So you can start with the Wacom or Intuos, like a Bamboo, something really cheap and small. And eventually, like after 5 years of doing this, I upgraded to a Cintiq, which is this big guy right here. So you can see my Cintiq setup. I think this is a 27 HD, and I got it at a company garage sale, kind of when the company was going out of business. So yeah, I'd save your money until you can find a good deal, because I got this one like almost half off. All right. All right, so now that we've finished modeling, we've got this looking clean and Dynamesh, it's ready to start printing. It's at 2.4 million poly, so it's a bit high poly still. I'm going to duplicate it, and let's run a decimation master. So I'll go to decimation master and pre-process current. And I'm just going to pre-process and figure out how to reduce my polys now. Ooh, crack that. This music makes me want to dance a little bit. Just a little bit. Alright. It's done doing the pre-processing. So we'll go back to Z plugin, and we will click on Decimate Current now. Not pre-processing, decimating. 20% should be pretty good. Let's try it. It'll be 20% of 2 million, which is 482,000 polys. Now usually I'd say you could go up to 1 million pretty easily, but in this case I don't seem to have lost any detail by taking it down to 480,000 polys. That's still a lot, so yeah, let's run with this. Alright, with this model decimated now, down from 2 million to 400,000 or so, 500,000 or so, I'll go ahead and save my scene. And I want to export this as the largest print I can do on my Raise 3D N2 Plus, which is about 24 inches tall. I've never done a 24-inch print. I did do like a hand outstretched, which was about 20 inches tall, and that worked out fine. Just to be safe, because I don't really know if it'll be able to do 24 inches all the way. I've never done it. I'm going to do it at 23 inches. Let's hope that works, because that's a lot of plastic if it's a waste. I'm going to go to my 3D Print Hub, and let's do an update size ratios on this. It doesn't matter which one you select when you click update size ratios, unless you're working at scale, and I wasn't. So I'm basically going to come to this, and now it's the tallest axis is a Z, and that must be the y-axis that we're looking at, the tallest. So I'll say that is 23. And so now it's going to think it'll export this from the bottom to the top at 23 inches tall. So let's do that. Export to STL. Do 23 in. Okay, so I forgot to do one thing. I'm going to press escape. What you want to do is make sure your subtool is visible. And in the advanced setting under export options, you want to change it from all to visible or selected. I'll just change it to selected. Because I don't know why it isn't set to this by default. ZBrush, if you're listening, change selected to be the default, not all. Because I don't want to export all my meshes for 3D printing. I usually have a lot of subtools in the scene. Alright, now I'm going to click export to STL again. 23 inch. Save. Side effect saying, when I hear the number 23, it just reminds me of Michael Jordan. Me too, man, me too. I was just listening to the Space Jam soundtrack yesterday. Alright, files were successfully exported. Let's get out to our desktop. And what I'm going to do now is open up my print prep software for the Raise 3D, which is called Idea Maker. Alright, there's a new version available. I will do that later. Probably should do it sooner because software updates for printers actually give you a lot of cool features and updates. But right now, I'm going to get this going. So I'm going to go to my ZBrush streaming folder. There's my Dwarf Warlock, 23 inches, and load that in. So this is a free software, Idea Maker. It comes with the Raise 3D N2 Plus, but you can also download it from Raise 3D's site. Now this is very, very tiny, because I think it brought this in at 23 millimeters, not 23 inches, which is a pain in the butt. So I could fix that here and just take this to 23 inches, and that should fix it. Now at 23 inches, the height fits perfectly, but this model is a bit too wide to print height-wise. But if this was a thinner model, if it wasn't a dwarf, say if it was an elf, I could print that tall. But it looks like I can't print it that tall because the base itself can't do it. So I'll scale it down. Let's try 20 inches. This might be able to work, but I still think it's going to give us some issues. Let's try 18. Alright, so now this is fitting in. So I would have liked to have printed this even taller. But anyways, this is my first time printing really, really large on this machine at this height. So let's try 18 inches. I'm going to go to rotate now and rotate the model slightly. Make sure it fits in my build volume. Now, it should fit. I'm a bit scared though because it's almost near the edges of the build platform. I like to leave a bit of a buffer whenever I can. But I don't really want to go any smaller than this either, so let's just roll the dice and see what happens. We'll know if this will print, and it will use up as much material as it does. Now, when we're printing this, you know, in FDM, you want to make sure that you're not printing this fully solid. That would use up a lot of material. So what I want to do is hollow this out. Now, there's a few different ways to do it. I could take it to Mesh Mixer, actually do a custom hollowing. But FDM hollowing is different from SLA hollowing that I just showed you. In SLA, you want to create a shell and have the negative space. In FDM, you still need some sort of scaffolding for the printer to be able to print the plastic on. You can't just have it shelled out. So I'm going to go to I'm going to click on here to start. And actually, I probably need some supports on this. So you know what? I need to add some supports for the book and maybe for this dagger. So let's actually scale it down slightly more even. I'm going to scale it down from 18 inches to 16 inches because I want to make sure I have enough room for the supports. For supports, it's pretty simple in Idea Maker. You just come to support button and you can do auto, or I can add them manually. And I'm going to add pretty large ones, like 10. And then it doesn't really matter how you add them because the software can figure it out and kind of mix and match. So it's going to merge through my supports anyway. All right, need some supports there, maybe some over here. All right, that should be plenty. I wonder if I'll need some supports up for the arms, but I'm not going to do it. Let's see what happens. All right. The supports have been created. That's shrunk down a lot. I wanted to really test the limits of this printer, but I guess I'll have to do an ELF next time to really push it. This will be a good first test. All right, I'm going to click on Start now. And I've got a few different options for how I want to prepare this. I could do a standard, high quality, or speed. So this is a test for me. I don't really care about the quality. Speed is the way I want to do it. But I want supports and I want to have a good amount of infill. So let's just start with the standard speed and show you what it does. Saying manual supports have been added. This option is disabled in the speed template. Do you want to add support structures? Yes. And I'm going to let it slice. All right, slicing away. Take the chance to drink some water. What are you guys working on this lovely Monday morning? Anything interesting? Want to share? Oh, yes. Look at that. This is not from the stream, but I just got a Facebook message from my friend Daniel Kinsley. Kinsley. What is it? Kunzle. I'm not really sure how to pronounce your last name, Daniel. But he made this sketch based on a photo of me at the hairdresser when I got my hair dyed this blondie color for the Aquaman shoot I did. And he turned me into a cyberpunk android. I love it, man. Thank you so much. I'm honored. This is very cool. Looks like you've got like all sorts of stuff going on in the beads too. I'll have to take a closer look here. Daniel's an excellent artist, clearly. I'll have to show you guys that photo of me at the hairdresser now. That's sweet. All right. Okay, so here we go. Estimated print result, 95 hours, and this is with the speed setting, and 32 minutes. I'd say that'll probably get done in like 90 or so hours. It overestimates. Estimated price is $45 because it's thinking about how much material it would use. $45 translates to, I'd say, about 3 spools of plastic, because that's, or none. It's saying 1,500 grams, so that's little less than 2 liters. I don't know why it thinks that's $45. It's not $45. A liter of FDM PLA is like $15 to $25, so I guess it's thinking on the higher end. Alright, so what I'm going to do right now is click on preview, and let's preview this thing. You can tell this is just a waiting game. It's just a lot of processing. So in the meantime, I found you the reference photo that Daniel used. That's me at the hairdresser, getting my hair did. And this is his sketch that he started off with. And then you've seen the final result that I just showed you. Let's see if I can pull that up again. Look at that. What a badass illustration. Thank you, Daniel. Very cool. Side effects saying he's watching a cool stream and working out. That's good, man. I'm glad I can provide you some workout jazz. Yep, 4-day print so far. Yeah, that's right. It's going to take a bit. Here we go. Slicing is complete. Okay, so now if we zoom into this slice preview, you can see all of the lines, how it's thinking this printer is going to do it. The supports are going to be kind of like a zigzag pattern, kind of like Tetris, really simple and straightforward. but then they should be able to just crunch off. Like if I take a plier to these, I should just be able to rip them out without damaging the actual model. Supports on the other side for the book. I think that should be plenty, hopefully. Looks like it all fits within the build volume, so I shouldn't have to worry about that, hopefully. And now, let's take a look if I actually slice down. So I can do that by pulling the slider at the bottom of my screen. I don't know if you guys can see it, because I think my screen resolution gets a bit cut off. So here's the slider after you've done a slice. Now let's take a look at what's going on inside. So you can see that I didn't need to really go into Mesh Mixer to hollow this out, because Idea Maker does a good job of creating this internal scaffolding on its own. So this is how its FDM printing saves me material cost. Instead of printing the whole thing just solid, it's going to print kind of a scaffolding, an X-shaped scaffolding on the inside. So I could do a custom hollowing that would save me more material, but I don't think I really need to. I think this is doing a really good job already of the scaffolding. But let's check it from a few different angles to make sure. So it's going to start printing just flat, come up. It's doing the supports for the books and the sword, or the dagger on the other side. It's coming up, looks pretty clean. Looks like everything that's starting a print has a support, except this area. That does not look like it has any support, which may cause an issue. Yeah, that's quite an overhang. I don't want the book to fall off, so I might add some supports there. That should be okay. Check the other side. And this is just part of the process, checking to make sure that your print has everything it needs. Alright, here we go again. So this shelf that gets created, that's scaring me a bit. So there's no support for that entire shelf for the arm on that side. And some of this stuff I think will be fine, but that is really scary. Let's check the other arm. Alright, so this one's alright. This one looks like it's coming up, and it should be able to handle it. There's a couple areas here that are just floating islands that might give me trouble. So I want to add a support for those. And those. You don't want these kind of just islands floating up out of nowhere without anything to support them, because that will probably fail. Same thing on the back side here with the sword, probably on both sides. So yeah, I think that should be it. That should be fine. That should be alright. Let's look over here. Another kind of floating island print up there. That's a bit scary because I don't think any amount of support is going to be that tall or help. I could try to make some supports in that region before. And then everything else grows pretty organically. Okay, yeah, now I know what I need to do. I'm going to close out of this preview. I'm not going to export. I'm going to add some more supports. So just from that session of looking where I'll need to add the supports, I know that this side works out all right. It kind of grows organically. But then I'll need some supports here. So I'll add those in. Got to find the right angle oftentimes with this stuff. And I don't want to create really unnecessarily tall supports either. Just trying to fill in some of these gaps, which may cause issues. That won't. That all look good. Right here, all of this kind of just juts out really quickly. So I want to add some supports for it. Now these supports will be created on my mesh, which is not ideal, but it'll be what it is. All right, hoping that'll be enough for that ledge right there. Probably need some on the other end too then. All right, hoping that's enough there. And the book, looks like I needed some right here as I recall. Just to be safe. Always better to be safe than sorry. Alright, I think that's it. Everything else looked like you would print. So just from that quick slicing preview, I determined where I would need to add a few more supports. And look at this from the top again. I think that should print fine. It's in the printer build volume. It's not as tall as I wanted it to be. It's about 16 inches, not 24. But let's just run this and see what happens, and I'll do another 24-inch print later. But let's run this because it's still going to take a while, right? It's a 4-day print. So let's click slice again. I'll go to start. And you can really edit these a lot. You can set the infill density. So if I say 10% is too much, let's say do 7%. Shells, we've got covered. Raft. Yeah, that's fine. Do on the platform. The raft is basically just the thing it adds at the bottom before it starts printing on top of it. Helps to remove the print. Supports, yes. All. Save and close. All right, so that's it. Standard, the speed setting with supports. Let's slice. All right, here we go. Slice is complete. Now it's saying 86 hours, even though we added more supports. I reduced the infill density from 10% to 7%. It also reduces the cost to $38, which honestly I think my cost is going to be about 20 bucks for this print. It's going to use basically a liter, 1 liter, 1266. I'll probably need to do a hot swap for the filament, but let's just see. I'm going to do preview again. Let's double check this. In the meanwhile, I wanted to plug Daniel Kunzle here. He's on ArtStation. Least I can do to share his awesome drawing with me. Looks a bit dusty. Needs to update it. Daniel, get on that. I don't really get to talk because I need to update mine as well. Mine is like really not updated. I think the last time I updated was this January when I did the Sculpt January challenge stuff. That was a fun time. This was a sculpt that I did, kind of like just a speed sculpting for fun thing for Saga, one of my favorite comic book series as of recently. And I need to finish this. This would make a great illustration. And you can see mostly it's just my fungusaurs, some 3D Smiths print stuff that I've done. I crochet some jewelry, dresses, then a whole bunch of random illustrations and sculpts. Yeah, I need to add so much more stuff on this art station. All right, Daniel, you update yours, I'll update mine. All right, slicing complete. Looks like it doesn't really complete it until I move this window. All right, so now, still saying about 90 hours or so. 86 hours, I think that'll get done in about 80 hours. And let's check out this slice. All right, so we've added more supports. So those areas seem to be guarded. That same thing here. No floating islands down there either. Let's do a slice and check. Infill density has been changed, so it's still doing the supports, but it's not doing the supports as many supports on the inside. Like if I reduce the infill density even more, it'll probably just spread out the scaffolding even more. All right, so this area, let me just double check that it's got enough supports. Yeah, I think that should be all right. Seems like a really long, sharp ledge, but I'm gonna trust it. I'm gonna roll with it, see what happens. That looks like an island that's being created. Forgot about one. Looks very minimal, but just in case, I think I'll add a support there. Some stuff there, but I can't really add a support that's going to go all the way down. Supports in FDM printing start failing after about 2 inches, so can't really add a big support there. What I could do is make a custom support, which is kind of a cube, which goes all the way up, and then gives it a ledge to add the support, but I don't want to do that right now. Let's roll with it. All right, so the only one I need to add is right there. And then I should be ready to start printing this bad boy. So right there behind the arm, okay? You come in down here, go to supports, and add some right there. All right, that should work. Close out of that. I will do start and slice again. And once this is sliced, now we'll start sending it to print. So in order to do that, let's turn on my printer. Okay, so how should I figure this out? All right, so here's OBS. I'm going to make this large for a second. And let's aim this camera toward my printer so you guys can see what I'm doing. Rotate this Cintiq towards the printer a bit more. A lot of notifications coming through. Not sure for what. Strange. Okay, so now you guys can see OBS pretty big. You can see my printer. Bit of glare, but let me reduce the glare slightly. All right, that's perfect. Okay, so now this is the Raise 3D N2 Plus, about the same price as the Form 2, 3,500 or so, but it gives me the scale that I want, especially for testing this stuff out. Also, printing in FDM in filaments, a lot cheaper for prototyping than printing in resin. So first thing I'm going to do is move all these off the top of this printer. Let's put them somewhere. I'm going to remove the top glass or plexiglass housing because this is a PLA print, so I don't need it covered. If you do ABS and some other plastics, even for some PLA filaments, you can put that glass top on. You can keep this door open or closed, and then you can have, maintain the temperature inside. I don't need to do that right now. So what I'm doing is coming over to the side, popping this open, and removing this filament. I'll turn the printer on. There's a button in the back. Make sure this build plate is secured So I've got these clamps. Let's pick these up from Home Depot. And it's going to make sure this build platform and tray is secured to the printer nicely. Because I don't want any shaking unnecessarily. Alright, so this is going to go all the way down to here. So I want to make sure there's no junk in there. That should be fine. And I've got blue filament. I don't want to print this in blue. I want to print this in black. And I just picked up this Hatchbox filament. This is ABS. Darn, I was thinking this would be PLA. But I guess I'm going to try it in ABS now. Let's see what happens. I prefer PLA. I think I just messed up this order and ordered ABS because I was in a hurry. I prefer PLA because it's a bit sweeter smelling when it prints. It's apparently better for you rather than having ABS in your room while you're working and stuff. But now that I've got this, I'm going to use it. So let's try some ABS filament print. I'm going to open this up. I need a scissor. So this is Hatchbox filament. I'm going to cut it open. Take this on out of here. That one. I'm going to pull out. You can see like they just kind of stuffed it here. And so if I pull that out, that's the starting point. And I'm probably going to cut this little edge so that it's easier to stuff into the printer. Alright, that's cut. Okay, so before I can put the new filament in, I have to take this one out. So on my Raise 3D, I'm just going to go down to here and just say, let's see, Utilities, Load or Unload. So this is a dual nozzle printer, so I can do multi-material printing in theory. So I'm going to print from the left nozzle, so I'm going to unload on the left nozzle. And this is going to heat up. So right now it's at 24 degrees centigrade, or Celsius. It's going to need to go up to 215. Once it's done heating, then I can click Unload and start taking that filament out. Put this down for a second. This is ready to export now. So what I'm going to do is here's a little mini USB. I mean, I can send it to the printer via Wi-Fi, but I just prefer doing it via USB, just so I can keep track of my projects, honestly. So I'm going to insert that USB. I'm going to click Export, and I'll export it to the USB drive. Call it Dwarf Warlock. Unfortunately, not 23 inches, more like 16 inches. Save. And it's saving the print file now, exporting that to G code. That's the printer. That's the code that the printer uses for that slicing. That slice preview that we did, that's G code that's going to be sent to that thing. So I'm just putting it on the USB while this heats up. It's already at 199, 200, so yeah, it's almost there. Taking a while to save the print file because it's a big file, I'm sure. Alright, successfully exported. Done. I'm also going to save this by exporting it locally and put it in my ZBrush streaming folder so I can keep track of where it is later. Now we'll call it the same thing, 16-inch. Save. Done. Okay. So that's done now. I don't need to worry about this anymore. Now it's time to print it. So I'm going to take out my USB drive. I'm a rebel, so I don't safely eject. I'm going to plug this in to the side of the printer. And now it's ready to unload because the temperature's reached 213 degrees. So I'm going to click Unload. And the rotors start turning. And I'm basically just pulling this filament out, the blue one that I was using prior. There we go. It's out now. I'm going to remove it through and through. Alright. Just pulled that out. So here's the blue filament that I was using prior. I'll put that aside. And let's load up the black. This is ABS. I was expecting PLA, so I might change it up a little bit, but let's see. I'm going to just put this in. There's just a roller on the side here, a pin. And I have to stuff it through the loader, up, and in here. Now I want to switch this up from unload to now load into my left nozzle. Temperature's already there. I'm going to click load. And now I'm stuffing it in. I'll probably have to do this at some point during this print. Like I'll have to pause this print and then do the switch up, or hot swap it as we like to call, without even pausing. I like to pause. It's okay to pause the print for like a little bit. Alright, just loading this in. And now I can feel it just pulling down automatically. Alright, I should see it start coming out of the bottom end of the printer. Let me give it a second. You can tell this printer's on wheels, so I'm just going to push it in so that it's backed up against my wall and desk so that it doesn't move when I print. Alright, now this is done. You can see the black filament is coming out. Actually, I don't think you can see it. I'm just going to press OK. I'm going to pull this filament out. Alright, so here's a bit of black filament that, actually you can tell it's like blue to start, and then it turns black as it goes, which is pretty cool. Blue to black. I like that it's like a little hair. Alright, so now that the filament, the black filament's physically loaded, toss this. Alright, now it's ready to print. So now I basically need to go to my printer to print the USB, because that's how I'm bringing it in. There's also the option for local storage, so I could save it onto the printer, or SD card. Alright, so I'm going to go to my USB. I'm going to click on my Dwarf Warlock 16-inch print, and I will load this up. So I'll click print. So it's now loading the print file into the machine. Close the door on this. And that's about it, guys. Once I've pressed print now, it's going to run through the motions and print it. Let me shrink this back down a bit. So nothing really dramatic or amazing happening right now. It's just loading the print file into the printer, and it's going to print it once it's ready. And what that's going to do, it's just going to start moving that arm around and start bottom to top, just like you see over here in the slice. Let me load up the Twitch and Facebook to make sure that you guys have any questions. Every time I see a FDM printer in action, I think of the Westworld opening credits. Me too, I love those credits. That's future 3D printing, man. We'll be able to print anything. Cloud Soda saying, I've never seen a 3D printer in action. I will show you the printer in action once it starts. It's probably going to take a few more minutes, and then it'll start going, and you'll see it. You'll hear it. It isn't very impressive, that's true, watching them live in Mordor. It takes something like you saw, what, 90 hours? No, it was set to 80 hours something, right? So 80 hours is going to take a long time. We got Philippe Lucas here checking in on Facebook from Belgium. What's up, man? I don't know what time it is in Belgium. I don't know if I should say bonjour or bonsoir. All right. Cloud Soda on Twitch is asking, have you ever printed anything and the power went out while it was printing? No, I have not had the power go out on me while it was printing, thankfully. I think I have had a few friends that happened to, and I've had all sorts of print failures. But what you could do to prevent that is plug in your printer to a battery backup, so at least that'll buy you some time. But honestly, like with these printers, with FDM in particular, you can pause. So you can pause the print and resume it after an hour, after a few hours. So at least there's that. With resin printing, it's very hard to pick up where you left off. So no, luckily that's never happened to me yet. Yet. Never say never. What happens if it's going to need a spool change in the middle of the night? Do you stay up? And does it give you an estimate to when the current reel will run out? Okay, so yes and no. It basically told me that the print is 1,200 grams of filament. One filament that I just installed, a new one, is about 1 liter. So it's going to be needing to be switched at some point during this print. Seeing that this is a 80-hour print, I'm not worried. It'll just keep going. And I'll check on it. I'll basically just keep tabs on it. It does tell me hours left, and I can look to see the filament on the right. It's plexiglass, so I can see it going. And I'll be able to tell, hey, this is going to print, or, you know, it's going to run out of filament. So I'll know when to check it. I basically check it, I guess, is the answer. Mortar Caner is saying, can the vibrations of a truck crossing the street ruin the 3D print? Not with FDM, no, because the printer itself shakes with FDM. The arm needs to move around, and sometimes the arm moves pretty fast, and it shakes, it vibrates the printer automatically. So the FDM prints, at least in this, it's not going to get ruined with the vibrations of a truck. With FDM, with the SLA printing, sometimes you can, if I have a truck go by, the laser can kind of get a little bit wobbled. So that could happen in SLA 3D printing. But honestly, trucks and this minor kind of stability issues is not going to ruin a print. You can just sand it a little bit and it'll be fine. Alright, I'm hearing something. You can see the printer is starting to take shape now. You can load it up a bit. Let's see. I'll see how far I can stretch my webcam. Probably not that far. Alright, here we go. And the printer is starting, and it looks very boring because the arm is moving very, very slowly. So there's not much to see. Exciting, I know. But it'll be exciting when the whole thing, the build tray itself, will lower itself down as it prints, and the arm will just stay there and keep printing this character. So it's going to go from there to just being a fully fledged character. So I'm excited to see at least my first full character 16-inch print on this machine. And then I'll update you guys next week. It should be done by Monday, hopefully. Let's back up here. Give you guys a bit of a seizure. And that's it for today's stream, guys. It's 10 o'clock almost. I'm going to actually call it a bit early and get to work because I have a lot of work to do for Sky Castle today. A lot of rigging stuff. All right, no more questions on Twitch. No more questions on Facebook. All right, sweet. Okay. Cool. Okay, thank you so much for joining me all. For joining me. Hope you guys liked the stream. Hope you guys found this slightly useful. Just to see how I go about prepping my stuff for 3D printing and trying a big FDM print. And I'll update you on this next week, same time, Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific. And we'll take it from there. I'll probably start something completely different project-wise. I have a class, my 3D printing class, that I need to work on for Mold 3D. So I might update that character and try to really finalize it within the next few streams. because my time is really limited and I've got a lot to do now. So I'll see if I can make that class happen and finish it up. Alright, so that's it for today's stream. Thanks again for joining me, everyone, and I will see you next week. Have a good rest of your week. Cheers.